Final Fantasy is one of the most iconic RPG franchises, and Final Fantasy IX, released in July 7th, 2000 and published by Squaresoft, felt like a fresh take after the heavy sci-fi/steampunk vibes of its predecessors. Hey guys, it's Harry. I've been a game designer and producer for the past 11 years, and today we're looking at Final Fantasy IX, its production and design. If you enjoy this type of content, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel. That helps me a lot, and frankly, I love talking about that, about the history of classic video games. They're so beautiful. Anyway, let's dive into it. Final Fantasy IX was developed across Squaresoft offices in Japan and Hawaii, so it was both a challenging yet fun experience to the developers, especially the ones working on the Hawaii offices, which gave them a pretty scenic view of the beach and the sky whenever they opened the window. To manage teams so far apart, especially back in the day when the internet wasn't as fast as today, was most certainly a headache. I can tell you that from experience working with teams from so many different time zones. It is a struggle. Final Fantasy IX counts Hideo Minaba as art director, the legendary Nobuo Uematsu as composer, and Hiroyuki Ito as game director. All of that overseen by the franchise creator and producer Hironobu Sakaguchi-san. Final Fantasy IX is arguably the most fairy tale-like of them all, with its colorful scenes, odd yet memorable characters, and emotional dialogues. What I love about the design of the world, the characters, and the story in Final Fantasy IX, and a lot of the other Japanese RPGs for that matter, is how much of a cocktail of different styles and references it all is. The world is clearly a medieval fantasy one, unlike Final Fantasy VII, for example, which was leaning towards more of a cyberpunk setting. But Final Fantasy IX is also not purely a medieval world. There's flying ships and some mysterious technologies that you uncover throughout the journey, but in the end it feels both familiar and fresh. It's very hard not to be mesmerized by the details and outlines of the world, the architecture and the colors. The different shapes and sizes of the world all tell you something about the landscape and the people. It's not random, it's a very intentional design. The characters are of all colors and shapes. Rhino kids with blonde hair and cute overalls, a bird wearing a hat and blowing a horn to announce the great festivals of Alexandria, a blonde thief with a monkey tail trying to kidnap a princess. It's a mixture of all these crazy different ideas that somehow fit together perfectly. And I love that. I think Western productions have this mindset to world building where they try to explain everything a little too much and force everything to fit and to make perfect sense in a world that is just a little bit too limiting. I love the poetic freedom that Japanese designers and storytellers take, and we can see that in other productions as well. Hideo Kojima is a director that takes a major influence from Western pop culture, but also maintains this Japanese style to narrative and design, leading to some very interesting combinations in games like Metal Gear Solid and Death Stranding. It creates something new, fresh, unexpected, a bit weird, it's true, but I love it. I think it makes for some of the best designs we have in video games. If you never played Metal Gear Solid back in the day on a PlayStation 1 and fought your way through Psycho Mantis, and one of the ways to avoid his mind control was to swap the slots of your game controller, I'm sorry, you missed all the fun of the good old days. And in Final Fantasy IX, the design of each of the characters is among the strongest that I've ever seen in any game. Each one has their own colors, aesthetics, and personality. It's very easy to distinguish them in your head from the way they look, the shapes and outlines and cheesy outfits, but also for how they move and talk. Naturally, it's all very cartoonish, but that sticks like glue in the back of your mind. Zidane, Vivi, Garnet, Steiner, Freya, and so many other characters, even the villains. And you can see that the character design is something utterly important to the developers and directors, something that they talk about at length in several interviews. The idea behind the design was to create a world that could be a fairy tale that children could dream of, instantly recognizable and easy for a kid to draw on a piece of paper. That was the base for the imaginative character designs. But apart from its elegant and vivid characters, Final Fantasy IX keeps the conventions of the franchise, with a party of 4 characters, a mix of turn-based and real-time combat with the active time battle system, world exploration with random enemy encounters, and much of the leveling and progression system for which the franchise is known for. The design of the world and characters was heavily inspired by the 1982 film The Dark Crystal, with its anthropomorphic characters and keen sense of aesthetics. You can even spot similarities in the proportions of the characters from the film to the game, with some big heads, ears, or hats, always focusing on the head and face of the character. Shinji Hashimoto, a producer on the game, says that Final Fantasy IX doesn't really have evil characters or villains in the traditional sense of the word, like Kuja, the main antagonist in the game. Every character has their own motives that you can connect to, kinda like Thanos in the MCU, but I'd say even more powerful. It's wonderful how Final Fantasy IX manages to create such a light-hearted world, characters and dialogues, but also unveiling a deeper and more emotional storyline and serious discussions as the game progresses. The game was subdivided in various different maps and parts of the world, and to each of them was assigned one director that would oversee the stories, quests, and events happening in that specific part. So even though there was a mainline plot somewhat fixed to the narrative, each director could create their own storylines that would connect to the bigger whole. That included writing all of the dialogue and smaller NPCs of that area. The goal was to create a richer journey for the player traversing each town, forest, each cave. So constant communication between the subplots and the main story was a key challenge in the game's production. And once again, having different studios in Japan and Hawaii working together just amplified the challenge to manage all of that and to create a cohesive story. Final Fantasy IX released in 2000 for the PlayStation 1, a console with incredible 2 MB RAM, 1 MB video RAM, and an R3000 CPU with 33.87 MHz. What a beast for its time. But that was also the year that the PlayStation 2 hit the stores. Even releasing for the now obsolete console, Final Fantasy IX pushed the incredible graphics out of the PlayStation 1, both on the beautiful cutscenes as in the pre-rendered 3D graphics in real-time gameplay. The companions in the game follow specific classes that cannot be altered, like Thief, Knight, Black Mage, White Mage, and more, but the player can customize the different spells and abilities that characters can equip. The combat also uses a trend system similar to the limit break found in Final Fantasy VII, where the character gets a special, very powerful attack after filling up their limit gauge. Some of the hard battles in the game rely heavily on that system, so knowing how to manage it is crucial if you want to survive. And contrary to how it may seem for modern players, Final Fantasy IX is not an easy game at all. Even some routine battles can provide substantial challenge for the player, and weaker enemies, if not dealt with, might kill your mage characters and lose you the fight. To me, that's part of the appeal of the battle system. Learning how to manage your mages versus more tanky characters, and also timing your potions and healing spells properly. Like many other games in the series, Final Fantasy IX also allows the player to engage with minigames, including a collectible card game that you can play with a lot of NPCs and merchants in the towns you visit. You can collect different cards, assemble your decks, and challenge NPCs to a duel. Final Fantasy VII was most famous for holding different minigames in certain parts, including the iconic Chocobo Racing. To even think of starting a project like Final Fantasy IX, the producers and the team have to imagine the game from various different angles. Many times a game like this, where you can traverse the world map to get to different towns and dungeons, will start exactly there, from a map. Understanding the world map and the flow of the player's journey help make the story and the quests more cohesive, and it anchors key events and locations in the developers' minds. Understanding the game's locations across different parts of the map offers a sense of continuity that helps guide development, especially in a production where each director is responsible for a specific part of the world. Along with the map design, the art team will need to do tons of concept art and visualization to come up with the tone and aesthetics of the game. So in pre-production is when the artist will draw characters, landscapes, monsters, so you can get a cohesive style all across different characters and the environment. And game development is that, adding together years of work from designers, artists, engineers, writers, audio composers, and so many more people. In the end, having to find a cohesive whole in all of that. The characters' costumes and art style have to fit into the narrative. The music has to evoke the right emotions at precisely the moment when they're needed in the game, to create the deepest connection between the players and the story. That's why games are an art form. Adding all of that together is not just something mechanical. It's not like adding 2 and 2. It's not a mathematical process, even though there is a lot of math involved in creating games. But it's something that happens in between, in the collaboration between many different disciplines, but all trying to tell the same story and to provide the player with a powerful experience. To add a little bit of context for the release of Final Fantasy IX, other important RPGs that were also published in 2000 include Breath of Fire 4, Paper Mario, Baldur's Gate 2, and Deus Ex. What an incredible year for RPGs that was. Let me know in the comments below if you want to see those games covered here in the channel as well. Final Fantasy IX is all about the characters, their motives, their own personal stories, and their relationships with each other. Deep down, it is a romance story centered on Zidane and Garnet, but it also touches on several serious and complex subjects like war, loyalty, identity, and finding your own path. Vivi tries to understand who he is, what is his place in the world, and what's going on with the Black Mages. Garnet wanted to be kidnapped by Zidane because of the struggle she had inside of her, feeling imprisoned in her own life as a princess. Steiner, with his uncompromising loyalty to the princess and the realm, has to question his own principles in order to protect his duties as a knight. But along the game, those characters develop some deep relationships, they change, they evolve, and that's the beauty of following their stories. You really get attached to each of them. For me, it's very hard to choose the characters to take into my party, because they are all so unique and intriguing. You want to know more about all of them. Maybe that makes Final Fantasy IX one of the most replayable RPGs for that reason alone, so you can explore different characters and even their combinations in combat. While you learn how to play the game, you understand each role in combat is crucial. I would not survive without a healer, but also a backup healer in case my main healer, usually Garnet, falls in battle. I cannot explain how important it is, even in early game, to have your potions and Phoenix Downs well supplied. And your DPS characters, the characters that will deal the most damage, are usually your mages, so they need to be protected at all times because they can be very fragile. And the game rewards exploration in a very simple but powerful way. There's always a lot of loot chests spread across the map, as well as hidden items that you can find if you look close enough. An exclamation mark will appear on your character's head when you reach a secret item and you can collect it, which is an incredibly simple but rewarding way to get you always looking at every corner of the map, each town and each room, because they might hide one extra potion or Phoenix Down that might save your life in the next combat. This little system is a great way to make the most out of each room and area. The player will spend a lot more time looking at possible hidden places that will grant them another valuable item, and thus little by little extending the time length they spend on the game. That is particularly important for older games. Even though Final Fantasy IX is already in the 2000s, games from previous generations had to become masters in making the player spend more time and have more attempts out of the same encounters. Because older games didn't have that much memory capacity in the hardware to work with, and had to make each megabyte count. That's also why games from the 80s, 90s and the 2000s are considered more difficult than most modern ones. For one thing, the design sense of balance was still being developed across the 80s and 90s especially, but also a cartridge or a CD-ROM that needed to hold a full game in mere megabytes had to extend the lifetime of the game for the player in any way they could. Imagine if you could beat Super Mario Bros., Contra, or the original Castlevania in your first try. The whole game would take you like 2 hours to beat, not even a full afternoon. Commercially, that was no good, so the games had to be tougher to keep you playing for longer. And because you didn't get that many games each month back in the day, publishers were certain that you would keep trying. And like every good Final Fantasy and most JRPGs at the time, you get this world map view that you could explore with your airship, increasing the sense of scale that you get when traversing the world. Even though Final Fantasy IX is not a true open world game by definition, this mechanic gives you that impression a little bit. Because you can go back and forth, revisit previous towns and dungeons, but exploration also comes with a cost. You are always risking the random encounters in the open map. And they could be tough. They could kill your characters, they could leave you without valuable potions. The game is filled with those simple yet powerful trade-offs and incentives. In 2025, Final Fantasy IX had its 25th anniversary, and Square Enix stated that the game has sold some 8.9 million copies since its original release. Considering the game is not even close to the most famous or successful title in the series, that sounds pretty good. The franchise continues to be strong even today, as we're getting the remake of the Final Fantasy VII trilogy, which is going very well for Square. All in all, Final Fantasy is one of my personal favorite series of games, some of the deepest and coolest stories and characters that I've ever seen. I have only played Final Fantasy IX when I was a kid, so it's cool to be revisiting the story of Zidane and Garnet many years later. You catch a lot more details that you lost before. You couldn't even understand the beauty and the depth of the story when you're a kid or a teenager. Anyway, I'd love to know your experience with the game. What's your favorite character? What's that moment that stuck with you and you remember the most in the game? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you guys next time.